You've probably heard some wild dating stories, right? Well, this is on another level. It's a story from a good friend of mine, we'll call him Ryan, and it's a perfect example of a modern dating nightmare. It all starts on Bumble, like so many stories do, but trust me, it ends in a place you would never, ever see coming.
Yeah, that's a direct quote from Ryan himself. And it perfectly sums up the absolute whiplash of the whole thing. I mean, one minute he's thinking, wow, I've met the one. And the next, he's basically living in his own personal thriller movie. So the big question is, how on earth did a simple swipe right spiral into something so obsessive?
Okay, so let's set the scene. We're in Seattle. My buddy Ryan, he's in his mid-20s, and he's just gotten out of a really tough breakup. He figures, it's time to get back on the horse. So, like millions of us, he downloads Bumble. All he's hoping for is a decent connection, and yeah, maybe a little less drama than his last relationship. Famous last words, right?
And then he matches with a woman named Lena. And look, on paper, or, on screen, they were perfect. A total 10 out of 10 match. They had the same vibe, both into indie music, loved the outdoors. The chat was just electric. They hit it off immediately. You know that feeling. It seemed totally meant to be.
So she's the one who suggests the first date, a golden hour picnic. I mean, come on, that's straight out of a rom-com. He shows up with the charcuterie and some good local IPAs. She brings her camera and this just effortless, super magnetic personality. The conversation was easy, sparks were definitely flying. By all accounts, it was a perfect A-plus first date.
But, as we all know, that honeymoon phase can be a little deceiving, can't it? As they moved from that amazing first date into a second one, these tiny little cracks started to show. Just small things that, at first, didn't really seem like a big deal. They just didn't quite add up. And man, things move fast. Look at this timeline here. They go from that perfect picnic on day one to a second date at her place just 2 days later. Then, a few days after that, a mysterious gift shows up. The whole thing was escalating at lightning speed, and so were those little unsettling moments. So the first real wait, what moment? It happened on that second date. They're at her apartment, and Ryan just happens to glance over at her wall calendar, and he sees his own birthday circled. The thing is, he had never told her his birthday. He tried to rationalize it, Oh, maybe she saw it on Facebook or something. But it definitely planted that first little seed of doubt. That tiny itch in the back of your brain you just can't quite scratch. And that itch, it just kept getting worse. A little while later, he gets a text from her asking why she missed him at an office trail run. One problem, he works from home. Then, his vintage compass keychain just shows up at his apartment. The note is obviously from her, but there's no sender info. Again, he's trying to brush it off. Okay, it's a sweet gesture, just a little intense. But the real alarm bell, the big one, was when she started dropping details about his sister's wedding. A wedding he was super careful to keep private on social media. Okay, this is the turning point, the final straw. She has a photography gallery show, and afterwards, they go back to her apartment to celebrate. Ryan gets up to use the restroom, and as he's walking, he glances down the hall and sees something that just makes his blood run cold. Pinned all over her wall were these candid photos of him. Photos from their first date, blurry shots of him on a trail. This wasn't art. This felt like surveillance.
And that was it. He was done. He made up some excuse about a headache and got out of there as fast as he could. The second he got home, he blocked her number, blocked her on every single app he could think of. But you know how it is. This awful, terrifying curiosity started to creep in. He just had to know what was really going on. So what does he do? He takes one of the photos she posted of him online and does a reverse image search. And that search, it leads him to an online forum. And on that forum, a thread with a simple, absolutely chilling title. And believe me, this is where the story goes from weird to truly dark.
Turns out this forum was a support group, but it wasn't for people like Lena, no. It was for the partners of the people Lena had dated before, and there were dozens of them. Dozens of stories, all sounding terrifyingly similar to what Ryan was going through, and they all revealed the same thing. Lena wasn't really a freelance photographer. She was a collector. She would obsessively research her targets, build these shrines with their photos and little trinkets, and then, when she was done, she'd just move on to the next spark.
So now, armed with all this terrifying information, Ryan realizes he can't just block her and move on. This was way bigger than just a bad date. This was dangerous. It was a pattern, and he knew he had to figure out what to do about it, and he had to do it fast.
So this is basically the trail of breadcrumbs from suspicion to confirmation. It starts with the reverse image search, which leads him to that forum. Then he talks to his sister, who confirms that, yeah, Lena had been messaging her, trying to pump her for information. At that point, with actual concrete evidence, Ryan finally went to the police.
And thankfully, the police took it seriously. They conducted a raid on her apartment, and it confirmed absolutely everything. They found a literal shrine. And what's wild are the details of what they found. They found Ryan's compass watch, which she must have somehow slipped off his wrist when they were on the couch. They found trinkets and photos from a dozen other guys, and they found these incredibly detailed notes on every single one of them, all pieced together from her obsessive social media sleuthing.
So, the big question, what happened to Lena? Well, apparently her therapist had a name for this behavior. They called her a collector of sparks. It's this idea of someone who gets addicted to that initial thrill of a new connection. But instead of actually building a relationship, they just treat people like objects to collect, and then they move on. Her little fixation had spiraled into a full-blown compulsive habit, and it was all fueled by how easy it is to digitally stalk someone these days. In the end, the charges were dropped, but only if she agreed to go to mandatory counseling. After that, she just kind of vanished from the Seattle dating scene.
But the story doesn't really end there, does it? Because something like this, it changes you. And as absolutely terrifying as it was, what Ryan went through gives us some really crucial lessons, especially for anyone out there trying to navigate the super blurry lines of modern dating, where, let's be honest, our entire lives are just a few clicks away.
And the first big lesson is about the aftermath. After all this, Ryan swore off dating completely for a full year. He needed that time. He went to therapy, he had to rebuild his sense of trust, his personal security, really just learn how to feel safe again. It's just a stark reminder of the real, lasting psychological damage this kind of invasive behavior can have on someone.
So what's the biggest takeaway from all of this? Well, Ryan's #1 piece of advice is to trust the itch. You know that feeling, that little voice in your head that says something is off? Listen to it. These are some of the major red flags from his story. And these aren't just personality quirks, you know? Love bombing, where someone is super intense right away, can feel flattering, but it's often a manipulation tactic. And somebody knowing things about you that you haven't told them, that's not romantic intuition. In this day and age, it's a huge sign that they've been digging. These are serious warning signs of bad boundaries, or, like in this case, something much, much worse.
Now, look, Ryan's story is obviously an extreme example, but it is such a powerful reminder to always trust your gut, especially when someone seems a little too good to be true. It definitely makes me think, and I want to leave you with this question to chew on. In your own dating life, what's that one red flag you will never ever ignore again?